From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. I never get tired of saying that. I'm Mike Maxon, that's Brandon Gray, and welcome for another episode. Minus Greg Crabtree, he's somewhere.
He's in Boston.
Yeah, that's right, Boston. Yeah, it's like, where in the world is Greg? We should always lead with that. But I'm sure he'll try to join us on the next one. But we're going to hit a variety of topics today. But first, Brandon, we just came off our Simple Numbers Mastermind group. You actually just dropped me off at my house a little bit ago, and here we are again, if you're not sick of me yet. But, everyone who's listening, obviously we have our consulting services for our clients and things we do, but we also run a mastermind group with a group of companies that have, man, Brandon, how long have we been doing this?
2018 was the first year we started.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's been a good time where we get the group together. We usually go to different locations around the U.S. twice a year and really hammer out a bunch of business topics. We had everything from sales and marketing, obviously looking at their company performance, aggregate data, comparisons, and then have those discussions with them around strategy and what's going right, what's going wrong. They obviously want to get the group's feedback on things they're looking to do in the business moving forward. And Brandon, I don't know about you, but what's always impressed me about this group is their openness to receiving that feedback and getting their getting their peers to really sharpshoot things that they want to do to make sure they got some good advice from them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you kind of look at the group. I think we've got 8 or 9 companies in it right now. And they're all hard chargers, top performers. Their growth rate is about 3x that of our 100 company model. Profits over double what that 100 company model has in terms of percentage. And so, these are folks that when you've got an issue inside your business, whenever they talk, you tend to listen because they've been there, they've experienced it, they're willing to share. And it's kind of that iron sharpens iron kind of concept. And the group's gotten really close, and that's been something pretty cool to see as well. As they got to know each other over the last few years, they participate in deals outside of their normal business in terms of investments and what have you. And I think everybody's looking forward to seeing each other again at the next one, without a doubt. But it was a great time down at Purcell Farms in Sylacauga, Alabama. So it's an unlikely destination whenever you hear Sylacauga, Alabama, but I'll tell you, it's top notch. If you're looking at a retreat for your team and you're in the Southeast, that's probably a location I definitely would recommend. So, but yeah, great group. If you want to learn more about it, let Mike and I know. We're more than happy to talk and kind of go through. But it's been probably one of the and from a service perspective, I think probably one of the more beneficial things that we've been able to provide that group of clients. So,
yeah, and a total another Mike and Brandon water cooler idea. I would like to let you know there's a lot goes on at Simple Numbers. I want you to know that I'm sure you all think we're in a room and we're writing numbers on the board, but Brandon and I have mastered the art of bumping into each other and being like, you know what, we should do a mastermind group. That was in like 2014, 2015, and then we executed it in 2018 just because we needed a team to obviously help us with some things, and we have a good team that helps plan it. But we don't just do business stuff. We shot some guns, we did some golfing, we always do activities. I think we were down in Miami, we did the Everglades, cigar tour. We've toured companies. We've done it all.
Tours. Yeah,
that was good. Go Cowboys. Yeah. So yeah, great. And so let's get into a little bit here. I know everyone, when you get me and Brandon, we're going to be all over the place, which is how we like it. And we're going to talk today about some retirement plans and phantom stock and sharing data with the team, and we'll probably throw in some things we probably learned from the mastermind group as well. So Brandon, let's kick it off, man. Let's discuss some retirement plans. Should the owners participate? Should they offer it? What are we looking at on retirement plans?
These are all questions that we get, several times throughout the year. So this one and maybe the next couple of podcasts, we're going to kind of go through what are those common questions that people are asking us. And so, one of them is around retirement plans. And It can be a great benefit to offer the team. But we want to kind of look at it in terms of the angle around, well, as an owner, what, should I participate? What does that mean? Those kind of things. And, there's a wide variety of retirement plans that you can do, everything from simple IRAs to 401k plans that everyone's familiar with. And then it gets a little bit more exotic past that. You're seeing a lot of professional services firms, some defined benefit plans and things like that. And I would say, try not to paint with too broad of a brush here, but we're going to talk about some general kind of things that may be out there that you may be addressed with or what have you. And so typically what the conversation looks like is a financial advisor of some sort stops by, has lunch with you or what have you, and then says, hey, business owner, I think we can save you a lot of money on taxes by having a retirement plan. And so you kind of perk up because you hear that save money on taxes kind of deal. Well, keep in mind, there's a difference between tax savings and tax deferral. Eventually the tax has to be paid. Now, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say that I'm not a fan of tax deferral, but that's not really a tax savings per se. It's just pushing it down the road. And so it kind of gets your ear. You start to talk to them a little bit and what have you. And so, the normal, we'll just use the 401k as an example. The thing with that is as your company gets to be of size, that's something that a lot of employers are going to want to offer because it helps attract and retain talent. There's some administration work that needs to take place there, some fees and stuff involved. So just kind of keep that in mind. The amounts that people can participate have caps to them and what have you there. Some of the more exotic things you can put a ton of money into, and that's usually where we see entrepreneurs kind of getting wrapped around the axle. So, I've seen cases to where maybe it was a group of attorneys or physicians, and they're able to put tens upon tens of thousands of dollars, approaching six figures, into these retirement plans. And so the first question that we ask is, as the owner of the business, is that the best place to get a return on your investment? So our 100 company model, along with a lot of other data we have, shows the minimum return an entrepreneur gets if their business is at 10% profit or 15% of gross margin, is a better way to look at that, is 50%. Okay. And so are you going to take dollars out of the business and put it into a retirement plan that you're not going to be able to touch until you're 60 years old and get a 10% return? Or should I be strategic and reinvest these dollars back into my business and get a 50% return? And so that's kind of the question you got to kind of come to grips with and looking at. Like I said, too many times, I've seen cases to where companies are cash strapped because they're making these massive retirement contributions for particularly trying to do things to benefit the owners. Like I said, fan of it for the team, but in trying to modify a plan or create a plan that's going to allow you to defer a lot of tax for the owners. 9 times out of 10, I'm looking at that going, why didn't you put that back in the business? Because you get a much better return. So, like I said, just wanted to kind of go over that. I think, probably the next time, or if you get in that situation where someone's like, hey, we can save you all this money on taxes, there should be a red flag go up, and you kind of start making some phone calls because it's probably not as it seems on the surface as far as that part goes. Mike, anything else you want to add there to that?
No, mine's usually, when we talk about it, it's usually about centered around talent and what is the team looking for. As part of a benefits package, the owners, if they do participate and they want to, put some in it to get the minimum, with the company match on it or something like that, and they want to diversify, not a whole lot of money. I just don't like when they think that dumping all of that in there, maxing out their 401, doing all that is like the best tax saving strategy. It's like, listen, we're talking that much money. I'm with you. It's get it back in the business, invest in there. Or if you are in a spot like, hey, simple numbers world, right? No balance on a line of credit, money set aside for taxes, core capital target reached, and you got that money over and above. I mean, look at different investment vehicles outside of the 401k too, whether it's, other businesses and things like that you could potentially invest in, real estate, stuff, things like that, you see much better returns out there with the money. I'm not negative on it. It's just not, to me, if you're an owner and you got that extra additional money, I just think there's better investment vehicles out there to go for. And we'll bring an investment specialist on there or something and talk about it. But there's other things you can go look at and put that money to use. So Yeah, good talk, man. That's a big one. We've gone the rounds of that one a few times. Speaking of mastermind groups, we've had the retirement plan discussion. Yeah, pretty
Mhm.
good. But well, awesome. So Phantom Stock, we get this one a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously wanting to, rope key players in your business into, and obviously, you know, give them some sort of feel of ownership. And a Phantom Stock plan, a lot of times, is that one way to do it. Brandon, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So one of the Gregisms, you may call them, that are out there is that cash is cheap, stock is expensive. And many times, entrepreneurs have great hearts. They have teams that have done a great job to help the company achieve success. And so, you want to share with them, which all four is great. Not a big fan, in which the IRS doesn't even really allow you to give away stock. There has to be a purchasing mechanism involved there. But nonetheless, folks think or are approached by their team members and they're like, hey, I want to share the outcome. I want to be an owner. Well, the first question I typically ask back is, well, do they want the economic benefits of ownership, or do they also want the other things that can come along with ownership in terms of decision making, control, and in some cases, and the economic benefit? And many times we find out that folks just really want the economic benefit, and so you can make it much more simplistic and get around them having to buy into the company by creating what we'd refer to as like a phantom stock plan or what have you. There's several different names for it. But basically what that does is just think of it like a compensation agreement that can be based on several factors in terms of triggers. You kind of creative, which is one of the things I like about it. So it could be, hey, you've got X number of units in this pool that whenever the value of the company goes up, then that pool gets funded ratably to that value. So, if your company went up by $100,000 in value and you've put aside in that, it's a 10% phantom stock amount, then that's $10,000 that would go into that fund for a payout at a future date upon a triggering event. So that's one way you can do it. Another one is they tie it to profit distributions. So anytime a profit distribution is made, once again, I'm using 10% because I'm from Alabama and have to keep math easy. 10% of whatever you distribute it out, the total would then go into that to be distributed out. So it mimics what takes place whenever you're a shareholder or a partner, without all of the, there's still some legalities involved. So I'm not saying it's without any of that, but without all of the issues that can be created by having other partners or other shareholders. And so once again, it can be kind of almost like golden handcuffs to some degree. I've got some clients that have the plans in place and nothing's really funded in it unless there is more than a 50% sale of the company. And then they get to participate in that. So like I say, it can create an economic benefit for them without really having to, kind of tie things down and have an extra shareholder or partner. The thing about it to be aware of is that there can be some payroll tax consequences there, even if they're not receiving cash just yet. So check with your CPA on that if you do create one of those plans. You'll need an attorney to draw it up, all the specifics around it and what have you there as far as that part goes. But like I said, it's another option out there, something to think about and kind of consider. It's one that maybe doesn't always immediately come to mind for folks. So we're happy to chat with you on those. We got a lot of clients that have them out there. And like I said, it's a good tool. Can be a really good incentive tool to retain some talent.
Yeah, I think it's good. I've seen it more come up in cases where you're in those industries, and whether you can use a CPA firm as maybe an example, you can use a law firm as a good example, where people have quote unquote partners and they want to be partners, right? If you're at a law firm, like the goal is to become a partner, right? We all see suits. Want to be a partner, want to be a name partner, right? Well, maybe you have owners in that industry that are like, hey, I'm not giving away equity here. It's, I started it, that's what it is. But a way to also be a partner is to make those phantom stock plans, have those in place. It looks good. There's a lot of legitimacy to it. It's a good plan. And like Brandon said, you get to share in some of that economic benefit, create the triggering event, just like as you were a shareholder, and lets them obviously feel the need for the ownership. I've really talked, for me in my experience, I've talked about it more around those industries than I have just more of your traditional companies. More of that has been more on the compensation planning side of incentive comp and things like that, bonus plans, stuff like that. But yeah, good stuff on the Phantom stock thing. Good tool, good vehicle. I mean, obviously, anytime you can have options, it's great to present to the clients we talk to and them to obviously look at it for their team. And again, the dynamics of that team sort of can lead you down the path of again, like attorneys, Phantom stock plan is probably a really good one. Hey, you're in a manufacturing plan, and maybe an incentive comp plan's better for everyone hitting targets. So, cool, man. Let's move over to owner occupied real estate. We always like this one. One of them just
we're gonna get some phone calls and emails after this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, generally speaking, entrepreneurs love real estate, and I like real estate too. But there are some factors you want to consider when it comes to, should I own the building that I'm in? Because we kind of have to a large degree been taught, it's better to own than to rent. Yeah, you kind of think about home ownership in particular. You're like, hey, I'd rather be building equity and what have you, and which is, I agree with that. It's good in most cases. A little bit different with a business though. So let me kind of throw some things out there for you to think about and consider. And once again, not opposed to you owning your own occupied real estate. I just want you to go into it eyes wide open if you're thinking about that. So the first thing is from a acquisition standpoint, you're going to have to likely pay about 20% down. So if you've got $1 million property, you got to come up with $200,000. So kind of back to that return on invested capital conversation that we talked about retirement plans. Should I use that money toward a down payment on a piece of property, or should I use it and reinvest it back into my business? And in some cases, could be regulation, could be risk that you may have due to location and what have you. You probably want to own your own business, or your own real estate. Zoning, I've got some clients that, because of zoning ordinances and what have you, it's really difficult for them to find space. So they need that to ensure the operations of the business are ongoing. So aside from that though, let's just say Mike and I, we got this consulting thing going and we decide we want to buy the office building. Okay. So I got that 20%. I got to kind of figure out where's the best place to put it. Is it in property or what have you? Secondly, if you decide, okay, that's a good move, I want to diversify my wealth a little bit, participate in real estate, you have to make this promise. I will lease the property to my business so long as I have a good landlord and so long as I have a good tenant. So we've seen cases to where clients are, sitting on top of each other inside of a business. They don't have any room for growth. And I use the building that we used to have for simple numbers as an example. When we first moved in that building, I thought, this is nuts. We'll never fill this up. And 5 years later, we're out of space. And so at that point, it started to hurt. If we had owned that building, it would hurt the business because we would have stalled growth because we did not have room to put everybody. Now, in the hybrid working environment, that's not much of an issue any longer, but in some cases it can be. So, the point to where it's going to harm the business to stay in that physical location, then the business needs to go find another building. You don't want to harm the business. Secondly, so long as I have a good landlord, I'm going to continue to rent. So we've got other cases to where, a business is hamstrung because they no longer need as much space as they once did. Think post-COVID now, and you got this massive office building and you don't need all the people in it. We're working remotely, but the business is hamstrung making this huge lease payment because the owner of the company owns the building. And so now they're having cash flow issues and what have you, where they really should be, situated to be in a little bit of a different space. I'll give you a real world example of that. So I've got a client that's in home services. And, you talk about a boom after COVID for what they do. It's a little discretionary. They're running that sucker wide open. Record levels of revenue, building the team, record levels of profitability, and they start to outgrow the space they're in. And so they start looking at properties and they find one. And, you don't buy a piece of property that's a little bit bigger than what you need. You buy one that's a lot. And so they found it and, it would work. We ran all the numbers on it. Things would be much tighter, but they can make it work. And some things kind of happened in the process to where they didn't move forward with purchasing the building. Well, fast forward 18 months later, demand has declined substantially. It's back to more norm in terms of demand. Profit has declined with that. They've had to make changes to the team. And if they had been in that large building, they would be up the creek. It would not be a pretty picture when it comes to profitability. So a lot of times you need that flexibility inside your business. So just be careful. Like I said, abide by those, those rules of I'm going to stay here as long as I'm a good tenant and as long as I have a good landlord. And then two, one other little thing to think of. If you do own the property, you need to lease it back at a market rate. If not, you're playing games with your P&L and profitability is either overstated or understated. So kind of keep that in mind. So, but yeah, I figure we'll get some calls and emails because typically we do after that. And feel free to, like I said.
Well, I mean, when it comes to me, obviously it's a case by case basis, but some things really turned me off to the ownership thing. One, the COVID thing. How easily, you're owning this building. Next thing you know, can't come into it anymore, and now you got a hybrid work environment. And now, with the hybrid work environment, it sort of made it. You could be literally look at your business, you'd be all in person, then you're hybrid, then one day wake up and be like, you know what, why do I got this building? And just go all remote. I've had several of my clients go fully remote, ditch the office, and it's been a huge saver for overhead, and it's worked just fine, and it's sort of forced them down that path. And so, I kind of I've had a couple clients too outgrow their space, and thank God they were leasing, because again, then having to go down the real estate path and sell it and find the deals. Then again, going to their landlord, negotiating for more space in a building or an office building, or the landlord was able to go find them more space. And it just seems like a lot more flexibility to me on some of that leasing stuff. But at the same time too, I also know why people might buy. And like Brandon said, zoning, and opportunity comes at, sometimes there's just a good real estate opportunity and you should take it. So it's obviously on a case by case basis, but I like the flexibility. And I know, like with us, Brandon, in our last building, we were maxed out on space. So we just rented another location, and guess what? We went hybrid, and then the lease was up on that one. And so we didn't renew it, and we're in a smaller office and we're hybrid, and it's good. So, we literally flipped buildings, and went to smaller space because of the hybrid. And there needed to be no real estate transaction or nothing like that. It's like, hey, the lease is up. We're out of here. We're going to occupy the smaller location, and people went more hybrid. And so we have plenty of space now to do it. So that was one of those examples that I'm talking about with that flexibility of just not having to worry about dumping that building and everything else. So,
we got some clients in the building supply industry, and, that's one to where, it can be quite risky if you did not own your own property there, because you need a lot of space. Sticks and bricks take up a lot of space, along with the trucks, and so you need that. And so if you were to have a situation where you were leasing and then you were unable to lease that moving forward, you got a problem. So there's cases, but just be smart about it. And, if you're looking at one of those decisions, holler at us, and we'll help bounce the ideas back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always like talking that stuff because sometimes, man, they're just good opportunities. Let's get it. And next one is sharing data with your team. We talk about this one a lot. What to share, what not to share. Should I? Is there a problem? We've had some fun conversations about this too. Do you really, if you're in an industry where you got a lot of workers that, maybe the market for their jobs, $20 an hour, do they need to see the CEO making, what they're making and how that works out? So we can hammer this. This honestly could probably be its own show itself on just sharing data, but we'll hit the high points today. But, real quick from my end, sharing the data, and we used to do it at CRB, we're open book management, great game of business. How to go about properly sharing the data with your team. And I'm sure Brandon's going to touch on this. He's really good at explaining it. But really is the transparency, but more about the education of the data. And that's what it all comes down to. And you just can't throw the P&L up there and just be like, oh, here it is. Have a nice day. Because then you're going to get like, oh my God, look at those wages up there. Look at, they see $500,000 the bottom line, and they look over and the owner's driving a Range Rover and they're like, he gets that money. That's what happens. And then we have a mutiny. They all hate everybody. And, and it's like, no. There has to be an education component of understanding, hey, what is revenue at this company? What is margin? What is profit? What's it mean? And that's how it all starts. And so, Brandon, I'll let you take it from here. But I think the key component in sharing data before you ever share data is the education on what data you're going to share, so you don't have problems.
Without a doubt. And so the first question I ask is, what's the outcome? What's the objective of sharing data? So in some cases, I get an answer of, well, if I share the data, everyone will understand, what it takes to be profitable. They'll be more bought in, as far as that goes. And I would say my experience has been, there's a handful on your team that you're exactly right about. They will be more bought in. They're truly, genuinely curious as to how it works. And, by having that data, they can make better decisions. But that's not very many in most cases. You're talking about a handful of people. The rest, this is where the mindset of the team is much different than the mindset of the entrepreneur. They want to come in at 8, they want to leave at 5, not really think about business afterward or be bothered with it, just do a good job and get paid. And as long as that takes place, they're happy. And so that's not a bad thing. It's just not how entrepreneurs, how we're wired to think. So you got to kind of first look at it and determine what's the reason behind it. Secondly, if you do determine, okay, I got a good reason, with the team and what have you, that, there's value to sharing data, then the next question becomes, well, how much data do you want to share? Because you don't have to share everything. I've had clients to where they will share revenue, direct costs, direct labor, and then other expenses. Mm-hmm. I got other cases where they just share revenue, COGS, and direct labor. It's contribution, because there's usually not a lot of folks below that line that are going to make an impact. So how much data should I share in that case? And then once you determine that, then the next thing is, just as Mike mentioned, you need to do a lot of education before you share information. Once again, it's that thing of, depending upon, someone's perception, which is reality, you could have an unintended consequence. They're going to look at the balance sheet and see, $800,000, and they're like, well, I can't believe I didn't get a raise. You got $800,000 in cash, but without education, they don't understand. It took $800,000 just to have enough capital to float receivables, those kind of things. And so there's a lot of education that would need to take place as far as that part goes. And you got to do it in pieces. I would say if you're an entrepreneur who's comfortable with finances, you didn't get there overnight. I didn't get over there, what we do for a living, I didn't get there overnight either. It took a long time to kind of understand it. And so a lot of times we'll just come up with a curriculum for our clients, break it down into pieces of, kind of modules of what we can teach them and what they can learn and understand from. And at the end of the day, there's data that can be shared without sharing the all-encompassing bottom line. Once again, sometimes that there's not a lot of control they have over that, but the things they can control, having some data and being able to share how well they're doing it and keeping it simple as far as that part goes. So, I think, like I said, before you go down that path, the biggest question is, what outcome do I want to achieve? Why do I want to do this?
Yeah, the also too is, and I don't know if you get to a point where you're going to share compensation data, things like that. I'm not really a fan of that. But if you do get to that point, you got to walk the walk with it. You got to have a process. You got to stick with it in terms of how you pay people, all that stuff. It's dicey on that one, but I know people have talked about doing it, and some people do it, and they do share it. But
yeah, it's one of those to where it has some benefits. It forces you to defend the amount of compensation that you're paying people.
Yep.
Okay, because you got you might get caught on the carpet about it. So why is it this person's making more? Well, you might have the same year's experience as them and the same title, but let me show you their output relative to what you're producing. The other thing that it does is it eliminates, to a large degree, the Cousin Eddie position. Cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Vacations, the the different movies. I mean, most folks are aware of them. Well, there's a line in the Christmas movie to where Clark asked Eddie if he's found a job. And Eddie says, "No, Clark, I'm holding out for a management position." Well, sometimes in companies, there's people who have a management position who are a lot like Cousin Eddie. They're not really contributing a whole lot, and they're just hanging around getting paid. Well, if you're open book on golf and what have you, better be ready to address why Cousin Eddie's on the team.
That's right. Hey, I hope everyone's ready, by the way, if you're listening to this podcast. As we get closer to Christmas, the National Lampoon's quotes are going to fly. I mean, it is.
Forgiven. It has to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they ever came out like with HR violations of like, hey, you can't quote National Lampoons, I'm a goner. Yeah, it's just part of like once after Thanksgiving rolls around, it's on TV all the time. I think I'll text Brandon throughout the week. Like I think I'm watching National Lampoons for like the 100th time on TV, and I laugh just as hard every time. So,
well, we use it a lot too for incentive plans. So
yeah.
You got one rule: you do not spend the incentive until you actually have it.
Yes,
I think we called Griswold for that.
So, yeah, I had to go buy that pool, man.
Exactly.
God, he almost got Eddie thrown in jail for that. But well, awesome. Well, Brandon, anything else today on this one? I think hey, this is not bad for coming off a mastermind. We didn't, obviously Sylacauga, Alabama, was that 2 hours from us down there we're at?
Yep.
Yeah. So we were able to drive, but not bad coming off of, I do thank Purcell Farms for shutting down the bar at like 10 o'clock. Really saved us some sleep. So that was a good way we were able to come back and do this because we were able to get some good rest there too. So
great man. And like I said, if you want to learn more about it, let us know. We're happy to share more. And as always, if you have topics you want us to discuss, please let us know on that. We do have some guests lined up for the next couple. We're going to talk about some things that are going on in the I'll use the HR world as a loose phrase, but kind of where the mindset of a lot of the team is at right now. And the gap between A players and B players, that's going to be a topic that we talk about as well. So, and then as we get a little bit closer to the end of the year, we have one of the friends of our firm, Rob Simons, with some strategy kind of planning tips and stuff as we get closer to the end of the year. So looking forward to that.
Oh, one more thing too. And everyone, I'm only doing this and I got to plug this because I get emails about this and calls. I'll get an email, be like, hey, do you guys have any of I was looking for tools on your website. And then I know you guys actually do consulting services and have a team and stuff like that. And it's like, oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, so if you're listening to the podcast, and you don't know this, we work with roughly 300 plus businesses. We work with groups all over the country, internationally. We have a whole team and everything here that does that. And, I call it like CFO light type service, financial analysis, targeting, scenario modeling, cash flow planning, really being that financial resource for you. So I'm using this podcast to no longer be the excuse that, hey, we actually do work with businesses all the time. Brandon, he has the terrible calendar because he works with, I don't know, how many clients you work with, Brandon? Like 70 or so in that ballpark?
Yeah,
I know he's a machine.
I've tried to reduce the count a little bit. So
yeah, I'm slightly lazier. Yes, but I keep getting those emails, and I'm just like, well, you know what? I'll just use the podcast platform to blast it out there because
call Mike.
Call Mike. Yeah. Well, all right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Until next time. That's Brandon. I'm Mike, and we'll catch you later.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.